FM and now 102.3 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Real Men of Real Estate radio show. I'm your host, Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor. And when you tune into my show each month, you're going to learn how to build passive monthly cash flow and create true financial freedom by investing in mortgage notes. You'll learn how to collect cash flow from real estate without owning the real estate. I mean, who wants to deal with tenants and toilets, termites, and all of the other troubles that are associated with being a landlord? So listen, on my show, I plan every month to bring on amazing experts for you folks onto my show so that you can get a well-rounded view of note investing. And, you might possibly change your life. You could change your financial future and leave a better financial legacy. So financial intelligence is what I preach, but note investing is what I teach, right, folks? And so on today's show, I have an amazing guest lined up for you guys. His name's Bill Bymel, one of those guys where when you meet him in person, you get a good vibe. And he's been in the note investing space for quite some time now. He's brilliant. He's an expert. He's going to offer tons of nuggets about note investing, about the real estate market, all sorts of good stuff. So do not go anywhere. You're going to want to listen to this show today. But what is note investing, right? So everybody, if you're listening and you're saying, what is he talking about? What is a mortgage note or note investing? I like to compare it to being a landlord because most people that are listening, they understand that. And so if you wanted to be a landlord, you'd go and buy a physical piece of real estate. Let's just say a single family home. And you would buy that and you would put a renter in there and you would start collecting rent payments every month. And that would be your cash flow. And everybody knows who's been a landlord that it's not as easy as it may seem. There are headaches, there are expenses, there are phone calls, there are issues, there are bad tenants. There's all sorts of things you can deal with that sometimes will take away from your ROI, number one, but also maybe take away from a lot of your time. And time for us is very valuable. And so with note investing, we think of ourselves as taking the place of the bank. And as we know, banks don't act as landlords and banks don't flip houses. Banks own the mortgage and the promissory note. So banks actually get to collect a mortgage payment each month with interest without having the ties or the liabilities associated with the actual physical real estate. And so if you can imagine, folks, you go to a bank, a hedge fund, or a private seller out there that is carrying one of these promissory notes that's backed by a mortgage. It means that it's backed by a physical piece of real estate, and you're able to pick this up, put it into your portfolio, and immediately start collecting monthly cash flow. It's an amazing investment vehicle. In fact, in my 22 years now of investing, dealing with venture capital, stocks, startups, I got to tell you folks, note investing is possibly the best investment vehicle I've ever seen. And that's why I'm into it. And that's why people like Bill Bymel are into it. And maybe folks like you want to learn about it. I'm going to do a little plug, Bill, but if you do want to learn about it, go to noteinvestoruniversity.com. Noteinvestoruniversity.com. We have a full college curriculum teaching folks about notes, how to be a professional note investor and create these types of returns hassle-free. So get on to noteinvestor.com. But let me bring my guest in so that we can get somebody else besides me talking here, Bill. But Bill Bymel, amazing guy, has such a wealth of experience in this note investing space. Can't wait to hear from him. But again, I will remind you folks, I went to a note investing conference. I'm much newer to the space than Bill, and I'm just chit-chatting with folks and shaking hands. And I meet Bill at a note investing conference and had some chit chats with him and shook his hand and immediately got a vibe like, hey, this guy, Bill, he's a guy I could be pals with. He's a guy I could do business with. Right, Bill? So it was so fun to meet you. It was amazing to meet you in person, shake your hands. And I'm thankful for you to spend your time coming on my radio show today to bless this audience with some nuggets. But do me a favor. since we just told people what notes are, can you help me expound upon that and why maybe buying notes versus buying real estate might be a good
Yeah,
idea?
no, absolutely, Patrick. Thank you for having me on. And hopefully, this next few minutes that we spend together will be fruitful for your audience as well. I had started as a real estate investor. I think the analogy you bring up of landlord is best associated with, what the public would think of as real estate investing, buying a piece of property and investing and renting it out. But that comes with a whole slew of headaches, as you mentioned, and it obviously has tax benefits. I do not recommend against investing in real estate. I think it's a fantastic vehicle. And I got started off my career 20 years ago as a real estate investor. When the last market crash happened in 2008, a whole nother aspect of note investing really came to the forefront of the real estate economy. And that was when mortgages crashed, the mortgage and real estate market crashed 14 years ago. There was all of a sudden thousands of mortgages that were non-performing that went into default and were upside down, where the banks actually owned paper worth more than the real estate underlying collateral. So that's the aspect of the note investing business that I got into, buying non-performing notes that I could buy at a discount to face value. We buy performing as well. I think it's especially for an IRA or something that's, I have some performing loans, mortgages that I act as the bank in my self-directed IRA. I think it is a fantastic return, and you don't get the phone call about the toilets leaking or that the neighbors are too loud, or that you would get as being a landlord. And you have a servicer that's collecting your payments, so it's really a very passive return, very nice income on the performing side. On the non-performing side, our focus has been buying at a discount to the underlying real estate collateral, at a discount substantial to the debt that's owed. And that's a credit that we get from banks and other note investors for the fact that it's non-performing. And then we make our money by working something out with our borrowers, by getting to a resolution quicker than the bank would have. And we'll get into some of the details about that as we go on.
Yeah, and you're exactly right that you don't have the normal headaches associated with like being a landlord, right? You don't get those late phone calls or the broken toilet phone calls and those kinds of things. And you did mention, though, there are advantages in which why none of us who are in the space try to steer people away from real estate investing. It's not do both, right? Because the tax implications for profits made by note investments versus maybe owning a rental with depreciation and those things can be a lot different. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to give tax advice. But the depreciation benefits you get with owning real estate certainly offset, what would be normal ordinary income or interest income that might be taxed differently than, and so I recommend a portfolio that is diversified. And I think that you look at notes both from the perspective of a real estate market that is very hard to buy in right now without overpaying. You look at, purchasing a performing loan at 50 LTV or 60 loan to value that's, throwing off 5, 6, 7% is a very safe investment. And it's a great way to round out and add to your portfolio and be involved in real estate without paying what I think are overly inflated prices right now in the residential real estate market.
Yeah, we're certainly going to get into that here later on in this show. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But so I'm glad that we've sort of elaborated a little bit for the listeners on what notes are, right? A promissory note that's backed by a mortgage document that basically collateralizes the physical real estate if they don't pay, right?
Right.
Sort of like if you don't pay on your car note, the guy with the tow truck comes and he gets the car,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the bank will get your house, okay, if you don't pay them what you owe them.
Exactly.
But so imagine we are the bank, folks. We're the bank. You get to step into the shoes of the bank. You're collecting these mortgage payments each month. The physical piece of real estate is acting as collateral for the promissory note. And like you said, not a lot of headaches, but there are some headaches involved and very minimal compared to the real estate associated headaches, right? You said it best. It's weird when people hear about note investing that no one has ever heard of any individual sending their mortgage payment to another individual. It sounds weird. So when people hear about note investing, they're like, wait, a person, an individual can own someone else's mortgage like a bank does? That sounds weird. So you're going to send your mortgage payment to Bill by mail every month? And you say, no, that would be weird. So you hire a servicing company, sort of like a property manager, if you would, if you're relating to rental properties, but a servicing company. What do they do, Bill? A servicing company.
Yeah, the loan servicer is a licensed entity. There's only a handful of really major servicers out there, and then there's several dozen smaller servicers. But the loan servicers could be them a major bank. A lot of Bank of America has its own loan servicing department. Wells Fargo has its own loan servicing department, but they own so many loans that they actually have to subservice out to other servicers. So, you might, whatever you get your mortgage statement from, and the majority of these mortgage loans it's a $12 trillion residential mortgage market. And the majority of them, believe it or not, are owned by private equity, not banks. So the banks do obviously hold, and obviously the federal government backs a good portion of the mortgages out there, and then banks a smaller portion, and private investment in mortgages, mostly in the form of hedge funds, major, pension funds. But most mortgages are privately owned by an investor, and that investor never talks to the borrower. The servicer deals with everything.
Yeah. So folks, if you wanted to invest into a mortgage note and you owned a mortgage note in your portfolio and you were collecting cash flow each month from that borrower, the borrower would be sending their monthly payment to a servicer, not to you, not to your home address and your first name and last name, a servicing company. So it might be ABCD Inc. servicing company. And that's who your borrower is having communications with, sending their mortgage payment to each month. And that servicing company deposits the money into your bank account. It's quite a nice little thing. But we're going to get more back into this, folks, after this first commercial break. You're listening to the Real Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA Radio with your host, Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor. We're going to be right back with more from Bill by Mel. Don't go anywhere.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career,
because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Okay, folks, thank you for staying right where you were and not changing your dial. This is Patrick Franz, your host, the Real Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA. I am back with my guest, Bill Bymel, the man, the myth, the legend, president of First Lien Capital, author of the Win-Win Revolution book. Hey, Bill, before we get right back into what we were talking about, how can people find your book, Win-Win Revolution, if they want to go get a copy?
Sure. Win-Win Revolution is available on Amazon. Just Google it, Win-Win Revolution book, and it will pop up. And you can, if you're a Kindle Unlimited reader like myself, you actually can read it for free. Otherwise, you might have to flip a few dollars and to have it to you next day.
Oh, flip a few dollars to Bill. He deserves it. He's a good guy. And the book is amazing, right? It has a lot of good info in there. So the Win-Win Revolution, go get it on Amazon while you can. There's not a lot of copies. Get in there and get yours while you can. So anyways, Bill, tell us a little bit, president of First Lien Capital. You were mentioning First Lien Capital specializes in non-performing loan purchases and working those out and making good profit while helping borrowers and such. Can you give us a little bit about how do you operate, Bill? Why are you different than other people that are in the space? We'll get into some forbearance stuff too, but how are you different?
Good question. And, as I said in the first segment, we operate in a different part. We're in the distressed mortgage space. So it's after there is a subset of mortgages on any given year that will stop performing. They'll be known as NPLs, non-performing loans, or distressed mortgages. And, that could happen in the normal course of time. Somebody dies and they don't pay their mortgage, or, they lose their job, or there's some other thing that happens. That happens every year. There's a 2 to 4% default rate. And, obviously those numbers were much higher 14 years ago when I got in the space. We were talking about a 14% default rate at one point in 2009, which, when you compare that to a $12 trillion residential mortgage market, it gives you the numbers in hundreds of billions of dollars of mortgage debt that had stopped performing. The banks unloaded it, started foreclosure, and they sold it off to investors at a discount in many cases. Now, when that happened, the idea of buying mortgages at a discount obviously was very exciting to me. But we had to create a new paradigm for how to deal with borrowers 14 years ago, because everyone was walking away from their real estate. Everyone was upside down. People had lost their jobs. We got in what was called the Great Recession, right, of 2008 to 2009, 2010. And so we were dealing with thousands of mortgages. My first foray into this space was a 2,000 loan portfolio in Port St. Lucie. You literally had 2,000 mortgages within a square mile radius that were all non-performing, where you had $200,000, $300,000 mortgages, and the property values were dropping down below $100,000. And so we created a paradigm that was borrower oriented. If we're going to deal with distressed mortgages, we do not want to fight it out in court. We don't want to be a big bad bank. So we created a paradigm to operate differently than most investors in the space. We buy our mortgages at a discount to their face value, and we in turn want to pass along a portion of that savings back to our borrowers. How do we do that? Well, if a borrower is upside down and they were going into foreclosure, they might be looking at a deficiency balance. We would waive that deficiency balance if they cooperate with us. We, in many cases, will pay people to relocate if they're living in a property that they can no longer afford. We'll offer them $10,000 or $15,000 in relocation expenses, set them up with first, last, and security on a new house. And why not? Because we're going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on attorneys anyways to foreclose. So the win, and that's where the idea of the win-win revolution came, is that we're constantly looking for ways to take a stressful situation, the borrower's in default, not wanting to pick up the phone, not wanting to deal with the debt in the situation, and we turn it into how can we help them? And in doing so, we've made a lot of money doing it because, for instance, we'll modify people. If I can, if we can keep somebody in their home and maybe they went through a tough time, the banks are very difficult to deal with when mortgages get distressed. You are not going to get an easy modification. You have to go through a lot of paperwork. Any of these options I talk about, when you're dealing with large institutions, there's not as much flexibility. So as private equity investors, I used to say we were like a bailout for a lot of people when we were buying mortgages back in 2009, 2010, because we'd, hand us the keys, we'd waive the debt, goodbye, we'd give you some money. It was a win-win all day long. So that's what we've created and what kind of separates us from other investors, especially in the distressed mortgage space.
I'm glad you went there, because again, exactly why Bill by Mel wrote the win-win revolution. Exactly.
That's right.
Why. So yeah, guys, get his book, The Win-Win Revolution, on Amazon, where you can read about this. And it's such a cool thing, Bill, that many different aspects related to investing is step on one guy to get up and to become profitable, and to work against people as competitors and things like that, and to get the inside track on things before other people hear about it. Man, what I love about being a note investor, because we're not a big bank. They're not just a number to us. You can help the borrower in so many different ways and always make it a win-win scenario.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Talking about win-win. So like a lot of people thought that when the COVID came about and people started to get a little bit stretched financially, maybe their office shut down or their job got cut off for 6 months and they lost that income, and looking for help out there. And they went and they got these things called forbearances on their mortgages. And, it almost seemed like, well, geez, these banks are being so nice to us and they're giving us this forbearance and it's a win-win. I get to stay in my house. The bank's not going to do it. But give us an idea. And for the folks listening, what are these forbearances that people got? What are the effects that are going to take place from them? And how will it affect the market?
First of all, it wasn't the banks being nice. It was actually written into law in the CARES Act that the banks and servicers were required to give forbearances to anyone that asked for them. And to give you some perspective, at the time that COVID started 2 years ago, nobody knew what we were in for. It was probably made sense to set up this forbearance program. And to date, since in the last 2 years, 5 million people have gone through the forbearance program. And over 3.5 million of those people have successfully exited the forbearance program, either by making their payments up or getting a modification or getting some kind of workout or payoff or whatnot. So it was a very valuable program for a lot of Americans. And it certainly did help some people. I also know some friends of mine who just took advantage of it, who didn't need the forbearance, but they were like, hey, if I can write, 10 less mortgage payments on my investment properties, I'll do that. What we all realized, those investors that did that realized very quickly, was those payments don't go away. And that's really kind of leads us to where we are now 2 years later, that now that these forbearance, the mandate on forbearances is now over. So the government requirement ended officially all on a national level, January 15th of this year. And what's, what we're seeing is a 1 million to 1.5 million people that remain in forbearance or in a current default coming out of forbearance. You have to realize that if somebody really did lose their job at the beginning of COVID, then, and, hasn't been able to get another job, or that, and now they've got 24 months of payments or 18 months of payments to right size the ship. There's not a streamlined modification program in place in this country. So every one of those $1 million to $1.5 million mortgages in these forbearance programs that still remain in forbearance, those people need an individual workout. Now, what's happened is that now that foreclosure moratorium is done, the forbearance requirement has ended, you've seen a flurry of private investor pre-COVID foreclosures restarting. Every attorney I talk to says they've been getting 500 to 1,000 new files a month, since January 15th. And that doesn't even include the big banks. The big banks are still holding back thousands and thousands of mortgages in default. And I know for a fact one of the larger servicers, I spoke to a senior executive last month, and I was told that they have 40,000 mortgages that should otherwise have been in foreclosure that are not starting foreclosure because none of the big banks want to pull the trigger and be the first one to admit that there's a lot of stressed out people still out there at the end of this program.
Yeah. And, it's for people's understanding, right? Let's say that a bank or a fund or a note investor owned a non-performing delinquent mortgage, and their plan was to either work something out with the borrower or go ahead and get them to sign the house over and walk away clean or go through a foreclosure or whatever it may be. It was put on hold, right? Because the COVID, they said foreclosure and eviction, they put a moratorium on, saying that landlords and lenders could not foreclose and could not evict. Well, in that case, imagine a bank that was going to enter a borrower into a foreclosure process and had a plan, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of that plan, got hit with the COVID moratoriums on foreclosure and eviction. And all of a sudden, what do? Their plan came to a halt, and now that everything's lifted, they're able to go ahead and start continuing business as usual.
And what I think will happen is, rather than the banks opening up the foreclosure gates, I think that those loans will be sold in the secondary mortgage market. This is where you and I, Patrick, go to buy our loans, and they will make their way out there. I know of some major government loan sales about to be announced, and we're going to start to see it probably more at the servicer and secondary mortgage market level, but we're going to be seeing an increase in foreclosures. There's just no doubt.
And that's going to create an opportunity for those of us that are already in the note investing world, or folks that want to get into the note investing world and add this to their portfolio, being a note investor, right? So we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more, folks, after this commercial break, about the state of the market, about the opportunity, why it might be a nice thing for you to learn how to be a note investor. So folks, Patrick Franz here on KCAA Radio, the Real Men of Real Estate radio show. We're going to come right back from this commercial break with more from my amazing guest, Bill Bymel. Do not go anywhere.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Alrighty, folks. Hey, thank you so much for hanging in there. I'm back to the KCAA radio show, The Real Men of Real Estate. And I'm Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor. I'm your host. I'm back with Bill Bymel, my amazing guest, president of First Lean Capital, author of the book Win-Win Revolution. Folks, before I get started here, go to Amazon, get you a copy of the Win-Win Revolution, and understand how beautiful note investing can be when you make it a win for you, the investor, and a win for the borrower, and how great it can be. So, Bill, we were just talking about the forbearance programs and why it was a great thing, but why it may end up biting some folks. And there's going to be a lot of non-performing note inventory hitting the market, hitting the secondary market from large banks and large funds now that these moratoriums have been lifted and people now are moving forward doing business as usual. It's going to create a wonderful opportunity for folks like us that are in the business, or for folks that want to get into the business. If you want to get into note investing, go to the noteinvestoruniversity.com and sign up there to learn all about how you can do this. But Bill, let's give folks the current state of the market. Right? What's happening? The real estate market still seems to just be crazy on fire. I know people expected a crash a year or two ago, and they're going, when is this crash coming, or is it never coming? Elaborate on this a little bit for me, would you?
Right. No, and look, there was a crash brewing when we shut down the American economy in March of 2020. And what happened is it's very simple. The U.S. Congress passed the CARES Act, and the federal government, us as the taxpayers, printed $3 trillion of stimulus and injected our economy with that money. Now, much of it, a lot of it went to a good cause. A lot of people that, especially like restaurant owners, that were, any kind of service businesses. But, what the end result, as we're seeing it in the real estate market, is that I've got, just as a case example, I get offers from guys like, JJ's Automotive, and he's got $200,000 in his checking account, and he wants to buy an investment piece of real estate. So that's kind of a one example of what the cash has done to all segments. And we're seeing inflation across the board, but certainly in the area of residential real estate, the crash never happened. Instead, we revalued what it means to have your home, because now most of us work in our homes as well as live. And so the market has been on fire, ridiculously on fire. Yeah. With all the cash out there, with low interest rates, there's with corporations coming in and buying real estate to rent it out. It has been it's gotten to the point where you cannot buy a first-time home buyer house anywhere in America for under $300,000. And that might work at 4% interest rates, but we know interest rates are heading up. And we know that won't work at 6% interest rates.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things coming, and I think it's all going to come into play in one fell swoop. One is that the interest rates will rise. That will be one thing that's going to make it tough. The market, in which has been lacking physical pieces of real estate for the past 3 years, is going to get flooded with REOs. In my opinion, right? The banks and the funds that finally foreclose on people are now going to have these houses that should have been on the real estate market 3 years ago. And it's just been missing inventory, and that's going to go. I know building is back up, so people are building when they can get a hold of lumber.
Right.
But so all these things come into play, and I think a lot of folks that understand real estate but don't understand notes is that, yes, folks, there has been millions and millions of homes here in America that people have been sort of squatting in, if you would, for the past 3 years. They're maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years behind on their mortgage payments, but no banks and no funds have been able to foreclose and evict. And so these people are just riding free as long as they can until now, when the movement starts to happen and people will start getting foreclosed on, and these will be available houses that hit the market by the millions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Patrick. And there's two aspects to that. One, just to give you some background, on any given year, on the best year in history, which was the lowest in default rates pre-COVID of like 2.8% or something, there was 300 billion of debt that went through the foreclosure process, or some portion of it. And on any given year, you're talking about 700,000 to 1 million units. That's on a good year. So on a year when there's higher defaults, you could be talking well over 1 million units. And what you're pointing to is that inventory has not been coming. So that will all of a sudden come back. And the other point you made, which was new construction, I have been sent a graph from the Federal Reserve. If you Google new housing starts, total unit new housing starts at the Federal Reserve, there's a graph that shows that we are currently have combined between single family and multifamily 1.6 million housing units under construction. This is the largest number of housing units under construction at any time since June of 1973, before I was born.
Wow.
Actually. So it gives you an idea that all of those things are the headwinds that you alluded to earlier, that everyone should be aware of. You know, I've got a 29-year-old son, and I've told him he's dying to buy, he just got married, dying to buy his first house in Southern California. And, you know, unfortunately, a first-time house in Southern California is more like $1 million. And I tell him, please just be patient, because the market will restabilize. It has to.
You know, we sometimes talk about too folks that missed their window in, say, 2005, prior to the market crashing then, when so many, I mean, people's houses had doubled, tripled in value. Right. People basically were wealthy on paper, right, because of their real estate, but not a lot of people know how to leverage that properly, right? And get a hold of that money and make it tangible so that maybe you can invest in more assets and build yourself more wealth over time. And I think maybe a lot of people may end up in that same boat this time, where it is, if folks believe there's a market crash coming and you're sitting on $300,000 of artificial unicorn money on paper, get that equity line while the interest rates are low, sell the house and rent a nice house for a while and be patient, or whatever it may be. But it's crazy to know, man, that in 2005 and 2006, after that crash started to happen, then people started to chase that market downwards. But when the market's crashing downwards, the buyers disappear. And so the buyers aren't buying. I'm not buying right now. The market's crashing. So then you're going to sell your house and you're chasing the market down as it drops and watching that equity that looked fancy on paper. Boy, I got 300 grand in equity. Now I have 40 grand in equity. Now I have none. Now I'm upside down, and it all just disappeared. So I've been telling people, get access to your money, make it tangible, and get that equity out of there. A paid off home is great, but becoming wealthy is even greater.
I agree 100%. And I think it's very good foresight for what's to come. Look, no one can time the market perfectly. And it is true that some of the greatest gains always happen right at the very end. So, you know, I thought I was brilliant when I sold out of all of my Florida real estate in the January, February, and March of 2020. You know, right before COVID hits, I thought I was like, oh, the world's going to go to heck. I'm so glad I'm liquid. And look at me now. I left millions of dollars probably on the table. Maybe not millions, but $1 million at least on the table amongst all of the various investment properties in my home that I sold in Florida in early 2020. So you never can time it correct. But what you can say for sure is that a real estate market that's increased at 20% or 15% per year is not healthy for the real estate market. it's not sustainable, and it will most likely lead to a reversal in the other direction. So if you have the ability, and the problem is most people don't have the mobility issue. You can't sell because there's no affordability to go buy something else. And so it is exactly what happens at the end of a bubble. So for those that can, I highly recommend exactly what you said, Patrick. Grab some access with a low interest, long-term debt. Interest rates will only be going up, or sell out that real estate and be ready to take advantage on the backside.
And here's what's fair, Bill. I think this is fair for us to admit.
Yeah.
Most regular folks out there that have created some paper wealth through owning a house and watching it appreciate in value big time over the last 10 years. I mean, crazy, right?
Right.
People that have had IRAs and 401ks, and they're planning to use those for retirement once they're 65 or however old. And I think that it can be true that most folks just don't know what to do with the money safely to grow their wealth. And that's why folks leave it setting there as equity, or they leave it in their mutual fund that's earning them a mean 1.5 or 2%. But they're leaving that money there because it's there and they know they won't lose it. And so folks, if you were going to, this is no investment advice. I'm just chapping it up here. But if you'd pulled money out of your retirement account to go gamble it on red or black at the casino, you're crazy. If you pulled 300 grand in equity out of your house so you could go play poker, or a professional poker player, you're crazy. But if you know about node investing, if you know how you can put money to work at a very nice, healthy annualized yield in a somewhat safe, or shall we say backed position, because the investment is backed by physical real estate that's usually worth more than what you invested. And again, making win-win revolution happen, win-wins for people in helping yourself as an investor and helping the borrower. But man, I got to tell you, getting access to your money, making it tangible, if you know what to invest it in, is one of the smartest things you can do while you still have it. If it disappears like it did in 07, you say bye-bye equity. Like my partner, he chased it down, Bill. He lost about 400 grand by being a little greedy and saying, no, let me wait a little longer. When my real estate's finally worth $1 million, I think he was at about 850 grand. It's going to, when it finally reaches $1 million, I'm going to sell. And boy, when it went up to about 900 grand, the next month it started drop. And he chased it down and ended up doing a short sale, as a matter of fact, with the bank, and had to give it up. But
so
many
many stories like that.
So many stories, folks. And we're going to be right back after this commercial break. And what we're going to do is come back with Bill Bymel, my guest, and we're going to close out the show. But guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to talk a little bit about the opportunity and why you might want to become a node investor right after this commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career,
because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
Alrighty, folks. Hey, welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA Radio. This is Patrick Franz, your host, and I'm back live on air with Bill Bymel, the man, the myth, the legend. No, he's president of First Lien Capital, and he's the author of the Win-Win Revolution book about node investing, how to make node investing a win-win and create some profits with notes. Now, let's get right back into it, Bill, but we were summarizing, just to summarize real quick, right? What notes are, why they're good investments, how come it could be a hedge against the real estate market. There's major opportunities coming up in the market, but why would you say that note investing is a major opportunity that most listeners that are listening and most savvy investors should add to their repertoire? Why would somebody want to get into notes? Why is it just a good opportunity?
Sure. On the one side, passive cash flow that is protected by real estate. So, and all the work is done by a loan servicer. You buy a performing loan, say $100,000. You never talk to the borrower. You put it at a servicer. It might be throwing off a 5% or a 6% yield. You might have gotten it at 98%. So you've reduced the yield a little bit as a performing loan. You buy it in your self-directed IRA, and the property, it might be worth 250, 300. It's a first lien investment. That's what I would recommend only. That's why I called my company First Lien Capital. And you are protected by real estate, which is one of the oldest and greatest investments in the world. And it's also a way to have access to real estate. If you buy, there is a distressed mortgage market out there where you can buy mortgages at a discount to the face value. And it's your job as the bank to then either foreclose or work out a deal with the borrower, modify them, or maybe give them some cash to leave or work something out. And the upside of that is you've got a piece of real estate that's worth more than what you paid for the discounted note. And if you're someone who's just looking to build a real estate portfolio, this could be a good way to access real estate itself, because right now the market is obviously very low on supply and overly inflated in pricing. So it's also a third way to access, third benefit is to access real estate by way of buying distressed mortgages.
Hey, Bill, dare you to go into a RIA event anywhere in the country and say, hey guys, I'm buying rental properties at 60 cents on the dollar, and see what people do. What are you talking about? I can't even find one at 10% over asking price.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys, if you did want to own a quiver, I guess I like to call it, but if you wanted to own a quiver of rental properties and act as a landlord, and that's your strategy, well, you may want to learn about notes. So if you buy non-performing notes and have an exit strategy in the note investment to go after the physical property, you can literally end up with rental houses that you were able to purchase at, say, 60, 70 cents on the dollar. So it's an amazing opportunity, right? Amazing. Hey, Bill, so we've mentioned it several times, but I do want to drive people over to get your book, and they can find it on Amazon, but they can also get it through your website. The book is Win-Win Revolution. Bill, and what's your website if they want to go and
Sure.
contact you?
Yeah, my website is my first and last name, billbymel.com. My last name is spelled B-Y-M as in Mary, E-L. So billbymel.com. You can purchase my book through the website, and you can also look at, I do a monthly webinar related to the real estate, mortgage, and global macroeconomic webinar once a month. It's on my website. You can see some of that, and you can always shoot an email to me if you have any questions.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And so, guys, you could read his book, of course, and if you want to get a hold of him, again, Bill by Mel, BYMEL.com, billbymel.com. Get his book, Win-Win Revolution, and also you can subscribe right there through his website for his monthly webinar series, where he discusses all sorts of amazing stuff. I've listened to a couple episodes of that, Bill, and it always is, when I leave after listening to one of your episodes, I'm always going, wow, that was really good stuff, man.
Thanks,
that's amazing.
Patrick.
Great,
appreciate
great guests
that.
on there too. Great guests on. One of these days you'll have me as a guest.
I know. It's not just desperate. We'll get you on there.
Oh, just kidding. So yeah, folks, listen, I mean, you guys can go to noteinvestoruniversity.com, where there's a college curriculum set up where it makes it very, very simple, very, very affordable to learn all the ins and outs of note investing. If you can become a note investor, you might even take it to a full-time investment strategy, but at least having notes as a part of your portfolio. If you have rentals, if you're in the stock market, if you have cryptocurrencies, I say, if folks don't know about buying these discounted mortgage notes, they're missing out, aren't they, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a ever-growing opportunity, and we may even see it become a big opportunity on the commercial real estate side, retail, office buildings. There are some asset classes out there that are very stressed, hospitality, hotels, just keep, we'll just keep our eyes open and hope for the best and take advantage of the opportunity as it comes.
Now, Bill, let me ask you this sort of for close. We got a few minutes left here, but if you had any advice for people out there that heard this, and maybe today was their very first time hearing about note investing, but they're thinking, man, this is fire. I got to learn about this note investing stuff. And what's your recommendation for somebody new that wants to get into this, perhaps?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say call you. But look, I think what's more beneficial maybe to the audience is maybe some scary headwinds ahead. If you've listened to the whole broadcast, you know that we're on the verge of something. We've got a war that's causing other issues, energy costs, inflation, rising interest rates, a real estate market that's been way overinflated for 2 years. So, it sounds like we're on the precipice of something. And I don't want everyone to get freaked out. Stay diversified. If you own real estate, stay as a real estate investor. Look at note investing as an additional opportunity, because I certainly think there's going to be a ton more opportunity in that space in the years ahead. And like you said, if you can access low interest rate, long-term debt, now is the time to do it. There's a dwindling number of refi opportunities out there, but if you have real estate and there's an opportunity to secure some long-term debt, then now's the time to get those refis done.
Yes, folks. I mean, access your money before it disappears. Because now a good place to put that money. Folks, if you can get into note investing and realize that it comes with monthly cash flow, it comes with great yield, it comes with upside, there's ways to make it a win-win for you, the investor, and for the borrower, which reminds me, don't forget, guys, go to billbymail.com or go to amazon.com, grab a copy of the Win-Win Revolution, Bill's book. And he'll get a little credit for offering all of that great value to us through that book. But thanks, Bill, so much for coming on the radio show and dropping such valuable information to the audience today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great. And it looks like we're coming to an end here today, folks. And so I really hope you enjoyed the broadcast of the Real Men of Real Estate radio show, brought to you by KCAA Radio. This is Patrick Franz with my guest, Bill Bymel, and we're signing off, folks. Thanks so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Talk 102.3 FM Riverside. KCAA NBCRadioNews.com.
This segment is sponsored by Press Print, Southern California's best full